Hey guys, this is Platt coming at you again with another kind of unusual video for the channel here, but I wanted to talk about one of my favorite retro gaming systems, which is the Famicom Disk System. This is something that I've been into ever since I really got into the history of retro games, and I've always been interested in its impact, and I wanted to own one for a long time, and I finally do now, and I've got it set up here because I wanted to talk about something regarding the disk system and something that you can do with it nowadays as long as you have one simple little device. But I want to start off with a little bit of a teaser here that has to do with obtaining games in the modern day, basically, because if you have any experience with doing so, you may or may not know that actually trying to get games comes with a lot of both positive and negative surprises, or basically just a lot of uncertainty is what I'm trying to get at here. So here's what we're going to do right now. I have this disc here. It's, I believe that's Kamen Rider Black. And I mean, it's not really a game that I feel like anyone would want to have like it in a really essential collection. Like maybe if you're trying to get every game on the disk system, you might try to get this one. Probably should have taken it out first, but anyway, gonna get it out here, and just gonna show you that it's pretty standard for what it is. Like, you know, it doesn't look like it's been any other game in the past, but let's pop it in the system, shall we? Now, whoa, what is this? Now, if you don't know, this is the disk checker application. Now, what does this do? Well, basically, if I come back to the disk system here, I can take the disk out and just, put it back where it was, and, it's not going to have any more problems. But what this is telling me to do now is it's telling me to insert another disk so that I can check to see if it's working well. So I have some discs here that I just got for my collection, and I haven't tested them to see if they work yet. Here's the mysterious Morrisame Castle. Let's get that out of there. As you can see, in pretty good shape. But let's pop it in and see what this thing thinks of it. All right, so the disk is working, so that's good. Let's check the other side. As you can see, that said NMJ-A. It's checking the A side. Let's check the B side. Oh, okay, well, that's something to keep in mind, that the B side of this disc is not working. So, oops, I guess that'll come into play here soon concerning what I'm going to talk about. But yeah, let's get back on topic here. So that's a really interesting thing to have on the A side of the Kamen Rider Black disc. So let's reset. And let's pop in the B side here. Okay, whoa. So this is All Night Nippon Super Mario Brothers, as you may know, and this was a version of the game that was only handed out to a good number of people who won a contest, I think with Fuji TV or something like that. And basically what it is it's reskinned Mario Brothers with some changes as to what's in the various blocks and whatnot. Like, you search for a block, it might be somewhere else, or, the thing that you're looking for might not be in the same block that it was in the original. But I mean, there's not much to this game other than that it's extremely rare and extremely sought after in terms of, being available to the general public. So anyway, we don't have to keep going on with that. But the point is that this disc, this Kamen Rider Black disc, it has some really interesting stuff on it. However, I must confess that that's not what was originally on the disc. That when I got this disc, it had the game that you see on it. It was Kamen Rider Black, and basically what I did is I went ahead and overwrote this disc with both a useful application in the FMC disk checker and a very rare game here, which is All Night Nippon Super Mario Brothers. So you might be wondering, how did I do this so easily, considering that it doesn't look like I have any sort of special disk writing equipment? Well, I did it with this thing. This is the FDSStick. It is a really tiny piece of hardware here that's just a USB-A on one side, USB-A male, and then it is basically Famicom Disk System RAM adapter female on the other side. Now, what's great about this is not only is it small, but it has multiple functionalities. So I'd like to go into a few of them here, and also I'd like to talk about what you can do as someone at home to make the most use out of this thing and do what you just saw here, which is get a rare game on an otherwise mediocre disc. So first, let's get into the biggest aspect of this thing, and the aspect that most people are probably going to use when they get it. Because it doesn't require any sort of modification to a console or anything that needs to be built, like a cable. So that thing would be basically an entire replacement for the disk system, because this thing can hold up to, I think it's 256 megabytes of data, which is, quote, more than what is needed for every single Famicom Disk System game that was ever made. So you can even fit bootlegs or unlicensed stuff, or most importantly, English translations on this thing. So let's hook it up here, and I'll show you what this does. There we go. So, as you can see, you have an entire collection of disk system games at your disposal, provided you're able to find a place to download them all, which shouldn't be too hard. I was able to do it in the year 2021, so should be okay. So let's take a look at something you can do. We have The Cursed Treasure of Cleopatra right here, which is the unofficial English translation of a Famicom Disk System game developed by Square. It is a, I guess you could call it a point-and-click adventure. It's kind of, it's like the structure is like Princess Tomato and the Salad Kingdom, as you'll see here. But yeah, as you can see, it was translated in 2018, so pretty recent translation that we got working here. And I'm not going to go into the whole thing here, but everything that you would normally see here is in Japanese. It's been completely translated. Got a nice font. And so, yeah, if you ever wanted to play English translations on actual hardware, barring the system itself and a disc, you can use this thing. Not to mention, this helps preserve discs, because now you no longer have to put in a disc each time you want to play it. See, because, one of the problems with these discs, of course, is that they just wear out from, over time. It's not even just that sometimes the data on it isn't correct. It's just that, it's sometimes the disc can get dirty, or it's just not reading well. So, yeah, preserve your discs, play English translations, all on console. Okay, so you get the point. This was something that I thought was pretty cool when I researched it when I was just looking for FDS, I guess, modern accessories that you can get. It's made by the same guy who does, who modifies 3DSs for use with a capture card. So that's pretty cool. He's got another cool thing that he does. It costs $30 according to the website. I'm trying to remember if maybe it went up in price, but anyway, yeah, it's a really simple device to flip the disk. I didn't demonstrate this, but to flip the disk, all you do is push the button. You know, pretty simple controls for what it is. You know, they're able to consolidate it all onto a really small little device. Yeah, this is one of the first things that you can do with it. But you may be wondering, so how do you write disks using just a disk system and this FDS stick right here? Well, for that, I'm going to have to go get a cable. So here's the cable. As you can see, it's a little bit rough around the edges, you know, because this is just kind of a passion project little thing that I was working on. Well, me and someone else who was interested in this project. So as you can see, these two ends may look familiar. If you're wondering, these were originally ends of what would be the proprietary AV cable that would go into a lot of classic Nintendo systems. So, you know, the AV Famicom, the Super Nintendo, the N64, and the GameCube. However, the AV ends have had the little notch that would normally be on them dremelled off right there, as you can see. And the reason for this is that if you do that, then you're actually able to fit this cable into a Famicom Disk System and as you can see, the Famicom Disk end of the FDS stick right here. So what this allows you to do is this allows you to directly connect the Famicom Disk System to a computer by having this cable, which is FDS, male to male. Male going into the female end of the disk system itself, and then male going into this basically Famicom disk to USB adapter that the FDS stick acts as. So what this allows you to do is give read and write capabilities to your disk system, so then any disk that you put into the system can be read from or written to. However, if this sounds too good to be true, it kind of is, and that's because the disk system actually does have some capabilities in place to prevent this sort of behavior. And when I say that, I mean most disk systems. There are, in fact, some disk systems out there, some of the very first ones that were released to the market, that do not have any sort of copy protection on it. But most of the disk systems that were put onto the market after the first variety have some sort of copy protection. This includes the Sharp Twin Famicom. I can't remember off the top of my head what kind of or what its hardware has that enables copy protection. But from what I remember, there are basically two other types of Famicom Disk System. It does boil down to a couple more differences, but in terms of what you would be doing to mod it, some things are only slightly different. So I'll get into the two main variations that you want to look for in the Famicom Disk Systems, because if you do watch out for these, then you may be able to come across one that is easier to modify. So actually I have two disk systems. One of them, unfortunately, is not working right now. It was my first one. And actually, it was working while I was working on this project. However, what I realized when I opened it up is that it is the type of disk system that has a little bit more intricate copy protection on it. Hey guys, Editing Plat here. So as I was going through this footage, I realized that there were a couple things that I just either got wrong completely or explained poorly. So sometimes you'll hear me jump in here to try to correct or restate some stuff. And this is going to be one of those things. So in this part, I'm talking about how the way you can identify what type of changes you have to make to your disk system depend on the boards that are within the disk system. And there are two boards, the disk reading and writing board and the board that interfaces with the RAM adapter. So the RAM adapter interface board is either a variant that does not have any copy protection on it, or it's one of the many variants that does have copy protection. However, removing the copy protection on those variants is a similar task across all of them. However, when you want to check the disk writing board, you don't actually have to go fully into the board and take off a lot of the things that keep the board in place. There is just a certain amount inside the disk system that you can remove to check and see if that board is either the one that has copy protection on it or the one that doesn't. Then you'll know whether or not you have to solder on this other board, which is sold on the international FDSStick distributor website, or whether you can just leave it alone. That was the main difference I was looking for in my Famicom Disk Systems, which was the disk writing board. Basically, if you open it up at the back, you have one board which interacts with the RAM adapter, and then you have the other board which actually does more with the disk itself. So for that Famicom Disk System model, what you would have to do is you'd actually have to make two modifications. You'd have to make some jumper cables and then either desolder or cut some wires on the board that interacts with the RAM adapter, and you would have to take out the disk board, which is a lot harder to do, requires a lot more experience, both with soldering and putting stuff back together, and you know, taking apart without anything breaking, and put some jumper cables on that. So not to mention, that one also requires a separate board that you would have to purchase through, I think, the international FDSStick distributor, which is based in Hong Kong. So that's, I think, another, I want to say $30 you would have to purchase, because it's a whole board you have to install on the disk writing board inside the disk system. So basically then what I did is I wanted a spare disk system anyway, so I got another one, and it turned out to be the different model, which I thought was pretty lucky. And basically what this model has on it is only enough copy protection to where you only need to make a couple of modifications to the board that interacts with the RAM adapter. You have to do, I'll pull up some pictures here that I took while I was doing this, because I can't quite remember right now, but I think it's something like 2 jumper wires, and then you have to cut a few connections, but it's a lot easier to do. And so then once you've done that, then your system is modified, so then you have to move on to creating a cable. And so there are, I think, yeah, so I did this a while back. I did this, I think, about 9 or 10 months ago, and in between then and now, someone has already posted a full-on tutorial video on YouTube as to how they went ahead and did it. And I think they might have built a cable from scratch, but I want to go through my experience as to how I built this cable here, and because I feel like it's a fairly easier way to do it, and I'll go through some of the other tidbits about it that may help you if you want to go a certain route, or maybe stick to what I did. So as I was saying earlier, this was constructed from ends that look as though they're the Nintendo proprietary AV cables. And so these are built to be like these. However, these are actually a combination of 2 identical cables that I bought through a seller who creates RGB cables. So here's what the cables look like. They are technically RGB cables, but they're for SCART output, which of course is more popular in Europe. And these specific cables are actually meant to output in PAL. I imported them from the UK because if you look at the different types of cables that exist for Nintendo systems to output RGB, some of them utilize more pins, whereas some of them utilize less pins, as in there are actually more individual wires inside the cable in some than there are in others. So I wanted to make sure that I had one that had as many wires as I needed to perform the disk system connection with, because you need 8 wires, 8 pins are going to be used. The cables that I bought had 8 wires, however, one of them was connected to the wrong pin, so I had to open them up, resolder the wire to the different pin on both cables, and then basically chop off the SCART ends on both sides and then individually solder the cables back together, and then, as you can see, cover them with shrink wrap and electrical tape. If you're able to find a seller who makes them, then they make good, basically stand-in cables for this sort of thing, because otherwise, if you want to do this without resorting to something like that, and you don't want to, or maybe you don't have a Dremel tool and you don't want to have to Dremel off the ends of this cable right here. Let's get a better look at it. Let's say you don't have a Dremel, or you don't want to have to bother with doing some rewiring, which I'll get into here. Then what you can actually do is, if you're able to find 2 spare RAM adapters, then you can actually just cannibalize these cables by cutting them off from the RAM adapter itself and then splicing them together to make 2 male disk system cables. And then you won't have to do any sort of rewiring or anything like that. However, not only does that trash perfectly good RAM adapters, but also the RAM adapters, basically, if you want to try to find them by themselves, they'll usually cost almost as much as a RAM adapter and a disk system together. So that's a lot of money you're spending on that. So that's not what I did, and not to mention that would give you a pretty short cable compared to something you can make like this. So this is what I did for mine. When I was doing my research, basically what I found is that when you look at the different kinds of RGB SCART cables that are out there, some of them do not have the amount of wires that you need to have full read-write capability. They might have an appropriate amount of wires for reading capability off of a disk, so you'd be able to get the data off of a disk, basically dump the ROM from it, but you would not be able to write onto the disk. So after doing a fair amount of research, I found that the PAL RGB cables for Super Nintendo have enough wires for what you need to do here. And then all you should need to do is just swap one. And so then how do you do that? Well, basically what you need to do is you need to be able to pry these ends open. There's a good video on this. I'll link it in the description. It's not in English, and it's actually concerning something a little different with these adapters. However, it does show you how to pry these open with a screwdriver. Desolder one and then resolder it onto a different pin so that it is able to have the functionality when actually put back into the context of the disk system. Then you also need to do that on the other end. And then when you just, when you splice the cables together, you need to make sure that all of the colors match, and then, cover it up with something like tape like I've done here, and you're good to go. So then you finally have your modified disk system and your cable. Now you can actually get into the reading and writing disk functionalities here, which I've been talking about. So let me demonstrate that. Okay, so we've got the disk system connected to the computer via the FDSStick USB. And yeah, why don't we try dumping a ROM? All the FDS ROMs have been dumped already, and they're already well available online. But let's just say for some reason we wanted to dump a fresh copy of Tobadasai Daisuken or 3D Adventures of World Runner. Well, we can do that. We can hopefully do that, no problem now. So let's get the disk in there. And let's do a bit of experimenting. All right, we're definitely reading. Fuck. Oh, of course, there we go. Okay, it's reading this time. All right, okay, yeah, now we can flip the disk over. And read next. and that's it. That's all we needed. So, disk has been read. So, why don't we try out emulating this ROM? Got BizHawk right here, so let's just see if that worked. Open the ROM and let's get to where that is. So there's Tobadasai Daisaksen. Let's read it. All right, we have successfully dumped a ROM using FDSStick. Check that out. Unfortunately, what I didn't realize while I was recording this is that my copy of Tobadasai Daisaksen is bad. As you can see right there, that's not supposed to happen. And the disk checker didn't even catch this. Back when I tested this, back when I was first doing this project, it said that both sides were fine. So yeah, it turns out even the disk checker isn't exactly the most reliable thing to make sure that your disks are actually working correctly. So unfortunately, you don't get to see the result of a full dump here. However, I do go ahead and dump one of the games that I know works pretty well, my copy of Falcion here, so I'll throw that in so that I can fully demonstrate the dumping capabilities of the FDSStick and the cable. Okay, Falcion dumped well. I guess that was just a shitty Tobadasai Daisaksen disc that I own, but I wouldn't really be able to tell because the disk checker says that it's fine. So I guess that's the disk checker just kind of not doing its job well there, not telling me that the Tobadasai Daisaksen disk does not really have all of the data on it. So yeah, that's why we were seeing some trouble with that earlier. Anyway, yeah. Glad we could figure that out. Okay, that's... I just forget how the hell you pause in fucking Konami games. Okay, now if you remember just a little bit ago, we were having some trouble with Mysterious Murasame Castle. We were not able to verify that the B-side was working. In fact, the disk checker program told us that it wasn't. So let's see if we can rewrite that side that wasn't being recognized, because then we'll actually be able to kind of salvage our disk here. So let's write to the disk. Here I've got a copy of Nazuno Murasame Joe. So I'm going to write side 1 to side A. Now we're going to insert the next disk. So we're going to turn it around, go to side B. Now we're writing to side B. And it worked. We wrote to the disk. So now let's see if the disk is actually working. And we can verify that using the disk checker that is on the common writer disk. So got to reset things a little bit for that, but I'll be back with that right away. Okay, so now we're back to the Famicom connected to the disk system, and we're gonna pop in the disk checker, which I have on the A side of the common writer disk, just so we can have a quick way to check our rewritten Mysterious Murasame Castle disk. We already know the A side is working, but we did rewrite it, so let's pop it in and make sure that it's still working. Shit. Okay, I tried rewriting it again. Hopefully it works this time. Okay, there we go. I don't know why it didn't work last time. Sure, whatever. Oh, doesn't matter. Whatever. A. End. Yes. Fine. Okay, now let's switch to the B side. Huh. Well, there may just be something wrong with the B side of this disk. Like, it may just be messed up or something, but I don't know. Let's try it one more time. Yeah, I think something's just wrong with the disk. It might not be fixable, but at least we got the A side working again properly. And you know what, actually, I guess we can pop in the disk checker. Okay, well, we at least got the A side back in working order, so I can at least say that it got rewritten properly now. But there must just be something physically wrong with the B side of the disk. It must be dirty, or just something must be wrong that prevents it from being rewritten properly. So, guess won't be having success with that today. But hey, I was at least able to show that it does work. So. I'm fine with that. I also read and dumped Castlevania 2 just to make sure that this thing was working, and it is, so. Yeah, whatever. Discs can be temperamental. So there you have it. That's reading and writing discs with the Famicom Disk System and the FDSStick. I hope you enjoyed. It was a little tumultuous, but I think we still got some good fun out of it. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.